So, we are Dorks and Dungeons. We're running a panel right now about basic improv for the tabletop gamer.
We're sitting up here.
We're in Portland, Maine, at the Doubletree by Hilton. And this is our panel. Ready? Ready, guys?
Okay.
Let's go. Hit the first slide.
Yeah!
Spoilers.
Thank you!
That basically goes over what we just said.
We like to start at light speed.
So we started 2 years ago a stage show where we played Dungeons and Dragons on stage. We took a bunch of comedians and actors and people that we just thought might be good at something like that, and we kind of ran a game. Dungeons and Dragons can be super boring to watch, though. So we took that show and kind of adapted the rules to be a little bit faster, a little bit, I don't know, more conducive to watch, I guess. And we kind of came up with our own thing. And while we were doing that, we kind of found a way to use improv to make playing a game more fun, because we were having a lot of fun up there. So now we're going to try to share that with you guys. Anyone have any improv experience out there? Nice. All right. Some of this will be like riding a bike with training wheels for you guys, but we hope you guys learned something. Anyone see our panel last year? All right.
Whoa!
Wow.
Forgive us for going over some of the stuff you've already heard, but the title of the panel was the same, so, you know.
Yes.
It wasn't like a sequel or anything.
Yeah, I looked us up in the program, and apparently we're supposed to be talking about how to rip off material. That was our description in the pamphlet.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're going to have to change.
Can you make a slide?
We'll add that at the end so that we don't have angry fans.
Let's start with basic concepts.
Okay.
I'm going to read this for people who can't read. Tabletop RPGs are games about telling a story with your friends. It's not about fighting the GM or the players. There are games like that out there that are like that. But...
Yes. So this is the big message here is because RPGs started out as wargaming and miniature gaming and evolved out of that. That's probably not news to anyone. But the point is that the traditions that were inherited by role-playing games is the idea that you are in competition with somebody. And that has, in the... D&D's been at, 30-something years now, right? Right? We up to 30 years now? 40?
I've only been there for like 27.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, guys. I've lost track of the years and the decades. But in any case, we've moved on from that, and it's officially become its own thing about telling a story. And that it's like that message, I think, should be said plainly, because I think a lot of people sometimes miss that. So that's why that we consider that the big message, is that when we're on stage and we are doing our show, we realize that if we approach this as we're trying to tell a story, not it's us versus him, usually, you know, he plays the game master in the show, that everything flows a lot better because we're all working together, and then it becomes more fun. So that's the big message, is you're there to work together, not to win. You know, we play Risk. There are other awesome games out there. You can go play Warhammer. We're not saying that competing is not fun, but that role-playing games are not about that.
Yeah, it kind of would confuse and a lot of the rules out there do confuse the issue, because a lot of it is like, how much damage do I do? You know, how can I steal from this person? There are books of ways for GMs to kill players. So with your group, probably a good thing to walk into a new campaign doing is saying like, all right, we're all here to do the same thing, and that's have a good time playing this game and telling a story together. I'm not going to try to screw you over, Game Master. I'm not going to try to screw you over, player. And once you all have that kind of baseline down, then you can really get into our next kind of concepts. Yeah, I know. I thought you'd pick up what I was putting down there.
We need a bell, like a ding. All right. The big concept following the big message.
Lots of big stuff.
Lots of big stuff today is yes and, yes and, yes and, yes and. No, I mean yes and.
You want to talk about what yes and is?
Oh, okay. That's right. I forgot all these people were here. Okay, so the big concept. So putting into action all that stuff we just said about how do you teach yourself to get along with everybody when there's such a tradition of being competitive, and the way you put that into action is using yes and as your guiding principle of how you play the game. So if somebody comes up with something crazy, does something crazy, because that's usually when you run into the no, is when you just go off into something nobody expected, and then they're uncomfortable, and they say, no, just no, we're not going there. So what you do, you say yes and what that lets you do is you say yes, and there's going to be consequences. Sure, right, headbutting a dragon. Rather than saying, no, it's impossible, say yes, and there's going to be severe consequences. So there's ways of tempering this in that people can't just do anything, but that you are being fair with them and being open about what are the consequences of what they're doing. And that way no one stonewalls in a story sense of just, no, 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 no. You have not chosen the option that I wanted, so we are doing nothing. Right, so that way the story can always move forward if you're always saying yes and exploring the consequences of their choices within that story. So it's really empowering to everyone. Likewise, it goes both ways for both players and game masters to be accepting of what everyone is presenting narratively in the story. So it becomes incredibly powerful, and you can use that simple tool in a bunch of different ways, because yes anding, you can also just add detail where we didn't know there was any before. I want to look in this random place that nobody thought to look. Yes, and I will give you something useful. I will give you a useful detail or something, meet someone of interest because you wanted to go there. So yes anding can explore all the ways you can add information. In whatever that means to you.
This is a concept we're going to keep bringing up. So raise your hand if you don't know what we're talking about with yes and right now.
Okay.
Good, we can move forward.
Everybody got it. Everybody's got it.
Shut up, Cullen. Put your hand down.
Cullen's just here to make us look cool. Okay. So here we're going to break it down to more specific points for you to take home and try. So the first one is going back to the big message, which is you're not competing. So don't, when the game master or storyteller or whatever presents you with something to do, don't subvert that in order to essentially win. Right? Don't view everything that they present to you as they are trying to screw you over, kill you, whatever it is that your character, thinks is wrong with the situation, right? It's more interesting when characters get themselves into bad situations, and that dichotomy between what is interesting in a story and what you as a player are like, but I must stay alive, and that is the only thing that is of interest to me. That's when you start entering into a competitive mindset. You have anything else on competitiveness?
I do. Has anybody ever played a game where you and another player, or your character and another player character, don't get along and start to take action against each other? Yes, this is something that happens to a lot of people. So this concept has to go into that too. While it is interesting for the two of you when your characters are competing, trying to steal from each other, trying to kill each other, that is going to bring a whole lot of things to a screeching halt, like the story, or one of your characters. But conflict between characters it's interesting. It can be interesting for a story. So be sure, walking into it, if you know anything about your characters and you know that they're going to come into conflict, make sure you have ways that you can yes and each other without necessarily coming to blows. Like, maybe you steal an item back and forth between each other, and that's some kind of passive-aggressive game that you play that you can do and move on from. You want to be careful that you don't view it as a competition between yourself and another player, because even if you are on opposite sides of the same thing, you're still cooperating on the meta level in this story. So, yeah, that's all I have to add to that.
No, I agree. I can attest to having a lot of fun when myself and a very good friend of mine are playing characters that, do not agree, but that we use that to drive story content forward, rather than it just degrading into who can kill the other person first, and then it's over. And that's not as fun. We'll just go play Mortal Kombat if that's all we want to do. Okay, point the second is failure is fun. Where to even start with this one?
Failure is something that's not so much determined by you or a game master all of the time, but just by a trick of the rules or a roll of the dice. How many people have failed a roll at a really critical moment?
Okay, we have their attention right now. So, failure is fun. What this means is that view failure as the opportunity for something unexpected to happen, not as an opportunity for you to just be not interesting. Because the corollary to failure is fun is risk is exciting. If everything was a known and a for sure, then why are we even rolling dice? Why, let's just sit around and just talk about, wouldn't it be really cool if a guy killed a dragon? Yeah, cool. Well, we saved ourselves 3 hours. So embrace the fact that there is uncertainty within the game, and that is what makes it exciting to play. And sometimes you can get into a play style where all you really are doing is just avoiding risk and failure and only, going after what is a sure shot. That can get really old really fast. Where you're, the penny pinching guy that never goes on any adventure and stays at home but has a pile of magic items and no one cares because he does nothing of use. Right.
I think that's like the opening paragraph of The Hobbit, right there.
Right. And then from there it gets interesting because he takes risks. Right. So, failure is fun. This will also come up for when we talk about tips for a game master, but when someone fails, it's use the rule of yes and use it as a chance to add an unexpected detail instead of just nope, you're stupid, let's move on, right? Like that's what we sort of expect to happen if you fail a roll, or if you fail to do what you expect. Instead, use it as an opportunity for a new opportunity to present itself. So think about that. Think about what new opportunity is presented for them to do something with, rather than stonewalling and having nothing happen.
Can you give an example?
An example would be, if you were...
Let's say you're trying to convince me of something.
Oh, sure, that reminds me of... okay, so, for example, you go to petition your local noble to give you, believe you that you have uncovered a terrible conspiracy, and you need to convince him of this, and you blow your roll completely, and he thinks that you are a crazy person and throws you in jail. And we recognize that that's a risk. If I'm in jail, the game is over. I can't go anymore. Except instead, the game master says, yes, you are put in jail, whereupon you meet your fellow incarcerated prison mate is the leader of the rebellion. And he wants to work with you because he hears you have heard about this horrible conspiracy. And so he used failure to open a new door. So always think about how can something going wrong lead a different path.
If your GM is good, and they should be, they won't punish you excessively for failure. So think of it more as a kind of a way to get yourself to take more risks and make the story more interesting, knowing that when you take that trust fall and totally blow it, like, someone's going to be there to keep this interesting for you. You're not going to be out of the fight. It's just going to be, it's going to take the story in a different direction. So rather than rolling another, melee roll, swing on the chandelier.
Don't ask questions.
What do you mean by that, Brian?
That's a wonderful question, Brian. Don't ask questions is be willing to invent things. So this is tying into our last point. These should probably be linked together. The idea of don't ask questions is be willing to invent information, invent details. Be willing to invent details rather than being a passive participant in the story and just waiting to be called on, and then just rolling, and then you wait to get more information. So asking questions is the role, or the what do I see, or do I have an extra piece of shoestring? Do I feel, you should be willing and able. You should feel empowered to just say what is true about your character if you know your character. And so that's what it means to don't ask a question, but be proactive about it. And if you go off the rails and say, I take out my $20 million and I buy myself a fighter jet, right? Right. Where you could just say, do I have a fighter jet? So there's always the social contract of don't be a dick. We could add that to the list.
It's a big slide at the end.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So all of these are, of course, always under the guise of, don't be a dick, which is usually coming from the fact that you're being competitive. So if we've already accepted that that's true, then don't ask questions means that you're becoming an active participant rather than just asking. You are now adding, and everybody's adding and collaborating. Anybody else on don't ask questions?
Any questions about that?
Any questions?
No, I got nothing.
Okay, I think that one's pretty straightforward. Okay, the next one is focus on character. Do you have anything you want to... I'll let somebody else talk first this time.
Sure. So,
Everyone off.
You, bro.
as a player, you have two functions, really. One is to follow the rules and take actions in the rules. Cool, whatever. That's the price to play the game. Since we're doing a cooperative story, your function in that story as a player is your character. So that's your number one thing to think about. How that kind of plays into it is you kind of know where your wheelhouse is in the structure of that cooperation. Oh my gosh, this is so scholarly. So if you know that the first thing I have to worry about is how my character is acting in this situation, you're not going to surprise the other people creating this story with you by doing something that's completely out of character and kind of throws a wrench into this thing you've built together, and the disbelief goes like, I'm out of here. So make sure that when you're taking action, when you're operating in those rules, don't be like, oh, I have like a 70% chance of making this hit right now, and the DM is looking like he's halfway through the paper, and so the monster's at about 50% HP. Think of what your character is thinking and doing in that situation.
Yeah, another point for focus on character is once you tell someone this is not a competition, then they go, then how do I play the game? Wait, I don't understand the point. So the point is to play the character. And so it would seem obvious at many times, but it's worth stating, focus on character. And so instead focus on the choices that you would make within the story that's presented, right? It's a mini acting exercise, hence why this is, improv for gamers. So if you're focusing on your character, you're going to move the story forward instead of knowing, well, in order for me to have the most assured chance of killing a dragon, I need to find the dragon slaying sword, and I do not care what the story is. my character's just going to wander aimlessly till I find the +10 thing of whatever it is I arbitrarily have selected. Instead, focus on character and say, my character cares about X, and so I'm going to throw myself in front of danger that is presented to X. Right? That this is what makes so many characters interesting in stories that we read, because they are acting as a character. So that's I think that's everything on that point.
Yeah. We can move on to the next one.
Yep.
Playing a character. So let's focus on let's drill down to the nitty-gritty details of playing a character. And I wrote out a helpful acronym for you guys to remember. This is the how you do what you do.
Yes, how you do what you do is who you are. Super easy to remember. This is like so straightforward.
Or you could say hide why diwa. Diwa. Yeah,
we'll
that's
have
tough
to come up with like a really great story so you can remember that. So then you can remember how you do what you do is who you are. It'll be okay. We'll add that slide next time as well.
Robin, our second partner. You want to talk a bit about how you do what you do is who you are?
Can we turn this up a little bit? Yeah, so how you do what you do is who you are is comes from more of the improv part of it, but it's really part of creating a character, and the way that a character performs an action or the way a character reacts to a situation defines that character so much. A different character would pour a glass of milk differently than another character, and just those small things are the way that we kind of introduce a character in a game or in a show for us. And so those first small details of how you're doing something should help you define who the character is to yourself, as well as to the other players in the game or the other performers in the scene. They'll be able to pick up on who this character is just by the way that you're performing actions or reacting to situations, either physically or emotionally. And that comes from just doing things and discovering it yourself. Whether you have your story background, which we'll be getting into in a second, in a couple points. Think about yourself, about how you do things, and how your character might do those differently. You know, how that changes who this character is as compared to a different character. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I have a follow up. So to help pin that into gaming concepts is. So you could say to a character, oh, so how does Gorthok fight? Oh, he's +10 to attack with a sword. You can do so much more than just oh, he's +5 to stealth. You can describe how does he stealth that's different from the other character or anyone else who is also +5 to stealth. Right, so my character he always wears a black cloak, right? Because that's classic. He's always crouching when he hides, and how does he, do these things? How is he a +8 at diplomacy? Right, so like add these details that your character sheet doesn't normally have a spot for. You guys okay over there?
Yeah.
She's making a mess.
Oh, Jess is just making a mess. She's here to make us look smart. So consider those things, because as you use those details and they become memorable details about your character, everyone else will pick up on those, and then when they sort of need to narrate your character into a situation, they'll do it right. They will represent your character. The game master will go, Gorthok shows up kicking his way through the window, because everyone knows that Gorthok always kicks a window when he enters a building.
It's
or whatever,
his most hated enemy.
It's his most
He
hated.
hates
Right.
windows.
He doesn't have +8 to athletics. He's got +8 to athletics and uses his foot to kick things. That's how he uses it. Right. So these kinds of details pulls everyone into imagining your character more than just the numbers.
This can also play out in the performance of how you act around the table. Whether you may be playing a game where you narrate everything, you may be a game where you speak a lot in character. But if you focus on, how is my character sitting right now?
Thanks for
what
coming.
what kind of body stance do they take? people will kind of take cues from you, see what kind of mood you're in. It'll help with the story. And are they going to start playing music? I'm sorry. People will take cues off of that. So you'll find yourself being a better performer in your game if you keep how you do what you do is who you are in mind all the time. I'm going to put you on the spot, Jess Miller.
Great.
Take a sip of that coffee as Jess Miller. Now, take a sip of that coffee as Maureen after a traumatic experience.
I don't like coffee.
I have nothing to add to that.
10-year-olds don't drink coffee.
We can move on from that.
Okay.
Thank you, Jess.
I think everybody understands that now. All right, the next one is have a mantra. Does anybody know what a mantra is? Anybody?
Does anybody have a mantra right now?
Walking around with one in your mind.
Tell us your mantra in the back.
Well, I'm Riku from Kingdom Hearts, so I'm mysterious. No one knows where I am. They have it for the whole game.
All right.
There you go. He's got here. He did it. We're done. We can go. So a mantra is when you have some way of succinctly stating your character. An example might be Han Solo saying, "Never tell me the odds." Right? Like that says so much about his character. So having a mantra doesn't have to be a catchphrase, like something they necessarily say aloud. It could be a way of describing someone, but it's very often something quotable. And having a mantra can so strongly inform a character. So invent a mantra for your character, and it'll give you something to go back to if you are ever in a role-playing game in an unexpected situation, because that might happen. And you don't know how your character would react to it, because so often, I rally against, Gary Gygax giving us the alignment system because I think it's terrible. It's not. To me, it leads to not interesting choices when you're just. Are you good or evil? Right? Like that to me is not much. That there's not much to that. But if you have a mantra instead, right? Scribble out alignment on your character sheet and write mantra. And then write that line of dialogue that the character would say when you're in a situation and you don't know what to do as that character. Look at your mantra and start off the scene with the mantra. And that will give you at least a foot to stand on as you orient yourself in the situation that is there. So it's a more interesting way of giving your character like a dramatic pole to stand around instead of just going, neutral good. What would neutral good do in this situation? Well, apparently there's only 9 types of people in this world, so we should be able to predict this pretty accurately.
And at least 50% of them are chaotic good. So
True. That's true.
Let's move on to the next point. Give your backstory hooks.
Hooks.
Hooks are what you give your game master. It's a gift that you give them. It's useful information about your character that they can use in the ongoing story. So when you're crafting your backstory, make sure... Another way to think of it is levers. Give a GM levers that he can pull that will motivate your character or set them in motion. So how many people have played with a player who is an orphan, who doesn't speak, and loves no one?
Oh, wow.
I have nothing to use against you. There's no way for me to leverage your character. It doesn't seem like you're interested in anything. It's hard to tell where you come from and how you'll react to new stimuli. So I could present you with there are orcs raiding this town, and if all I have is a backstory with nothing, and you're not from anywhere, and you don't care about this town, you're gonna be like, okay, I'm in town buying armor. I don't care. And I may have written, an encounter with 40 orcs, and there's an orc king, and you discover a big bad guy, and now that's all nothing, because I can't leverage your character. there are other reasons to do this. It kind of informs how it'll inform how you act in a situation. It'll help you to give somebody something that they can use in order to take a scene forward. I can't think of an example right now. Can you? Like,
Of what?
of a hook.
Oh,
Jorgen killing all the cats?
yeah. So, hooks. Hook. So before I give you an example, a hook is something that the game master, you're specifically presenting to the game master for them to yes and in the story. You are giving them information that they will go, yes, that's true, and here's what you didn't know about it. So the classic hook is, the mysterious assassin, because everyone loves being an orphan. And so the hook is always, well, then who did it? So that's the most classic hook of them all. But other hooks can simply be a piece of information that your character just wants to know for a reason other than someone being murdered, right? So it's huge, it's open. But just invent people that you have met, your character has met, name specific people, go specific places where you did something important or possibly something bad if your character has made mistakes or is chaotic evil if you're following those rules. And those become the hooks. So an example of a hook is, as Robin brought up, is one of the characters in our show that I play. At one point, he's a dwarf, and he had never met a cat before. And so upon reaching the surface, he killed a lot of cats in one particular town. And this has had fallout for him for a long time, because there are now it becomes yes-anded into consequences of how many people did you upset by this thing, that there's constantly a source of irate people that don't like him because he killed their cat. So, and it being a world of fantasy, everything gets escalated to fireballs and dragons, so it's out of control. But that's an example of a hook, where you did something and you don't know the consequences of it, but you're leaving it open for the game master to come up with a consequence. Oh, one time my character was a kid, and he stole this box of elixirs from the local hermit and gave it to some guy that paid him 20 gold. I don't know, that happened when he was a kid. In any case, my character's now this knight, and he goes around doing things, but he had a rough childhood. That's a hook. That's a huge hook. Who did he take it from? Who did he give it to? What were those elixirs? Right? Those are hooks that your character is tied to and would feel guilt about and would be compelled into action, but you don't know the details, so it still gets to be a mystery for you. A bad hook is one where you go, he stole the elixir of life, he gave it to the god of undeath, and you've already filled in all the details. It's not exciting, right? It's not as interesting because you've already written out the whole story. And so it goes back to the take a risk. Right? Failure's fun. You want to risk, so make it unknown. You don't know the answer. Please tell me, Game Master, tie this into your story. And so that's why hooks are exciting. And then the last one we've talked about a lot is inventing things. So inventing things, which also ties into character histories, is feel free to, you should feel empowered to say, oh, there was this order or a cult or a group that my character interacted with at some point, right? You're inventing something to go with your hook that you don't necessarily invent all the details with, but you've added detail to the character, to the shared story, the world, that the game master now can do something with, right? Here's a gift. Here's an evil cult that I'm tied to, rather than him making up his own. He or she. I keep saying. I should be more sensitive to all the women.
It really
I've
is.
been
Like
offended
this
whole
room
time.
is like 50%
I know.
women.
I'm gonna get beat up later. But my point is, invent things. Even before the story starts and we're all sitting around a table, feel free to invent something. I like it as well because I'm usually not interested in reading 700 pages of setting material for me to pluck something out of. I'm probably going to invent something. I'm going to read the first 30 pages of a summary, and then I will make up the rest.
Anyone play with a DM that gets really into preparation and has a story they want to tell, and they have details on everything?
All right.
You
Are
can.
we leading into our next slide?
Well, we're going into GM stuff, but this is how a player should act in terms of.
Okay. All right.
you can tell your GM nicely that that's cute and everything, but information that's presented while you're playing trumps anything that was prepared beforehand. You're the expert on your character, and you're the expert on what's happening right then because you're all collaborating on this story. So if you have a GM that's a control freak like that and you say there's a cult and he's like there's not, you should be like, well, there is. I just spoke in character and said there was. Like page 2 is the Dungeon Master's Guide says yes and me on this, so I'm not trying to derail, but that's there. Otherwise, if you let the GM just have their way with everything and you're just listening to their story, just have them read you a novel.
Okay, I think we're ready for the next slide. Right?
Yeah, now I'm going to talk about to the GMs out there. GMs, raise your hand. Nice.
I don't know.
No, that was
Hard
applause
working.
worthy. It was,
Definitely.
my hands were busy.
Same thing now. You are not competing with your players. That's not saying you can't kill players. How many of you have killed players? All right, sometimes that's a yes and. Sometimes that's the consequence for the choice that they made.
We killed someone halfway through a show once.
True, my character died halfway through a show one time, and the show was still great.
It's better.
I was getting to that.
I'm joking.
We had to lug his dead body around.
That's comedy gold.
It was good. Weekend at Bernie's for the rest of the show.
Yes. So it's worth reiterating that we're here to tell a story and that you're not competing. And so I think that's why in early games, things like puzzles and traps were so popular, because you were really just saying to the other people at the table, solve this puzzle. I'm smarter than you. And I'm not saying that puzzles and riddles aren't fun.
Or that you're not smarter than your players.
Or that you're not smarter than your players, because you probably are. But don't view it as, how do you screw your friends over. Look at it as how you challenge them in a story. So we've talked a lot about this. We don't have to go on.
All right. I had so much prepared. All right, moving on. The who cares thing. When you're preparing, or if you're in-game, or if you're, actually, this is a good rule for life, too. If you are preparing anything as a GM, you need to ask yourself, who cares? Why should I be presenting this to the players? For example, anyone have shopkeeps in their game? And do you roleplay through all of that, all of the armor buying, every transaction? If you do that, there better be a reason to care about it. We in our show, and we're probably more sensitive to this than your players will be because we have an obligation to be funny and interesting on stage. But if you're seeing a scene that and you want to play it out and you can't just get rid of it with a hand wave, there better be stakes to make all of your players care about it. And you should probably find a way to involve as many of your players as you possibly can. Because that shopkeep scene, while it, if you want to go through your campaign in a linear fashion and go through everything, it's cool for you and it's cool for the person doing the buying. It's not cool for anybody else at the table most of the time. So keep in mind when you're preparing that everything has to be important. All information you present has to be important to everybody. Otherwise, it's just wasted time. Do you have a question on that one? Oh, you were making... Beast Boy, you were making a... Oh, okay.
We're sorry. We didn't mean to call you out.
No.
We do have a question now.
Yeah.
How do you do a shop keep? You go into town, you go into down and adventuring for the day, and everyone wants to buy stuff. It could be really tedious. How do you kind of roll through that?
Just hand them the book and say, buy what you can afford, and move on with it. That's my take on it. Some people probably love haggling, and I don't. I would rather be slaying dragons.
You also can get into what's called a transactional scene, which is something that's really hard to make interesting. So a lot of game masters I've talked to will actually save all that buying stuff for in between sessions. Just absolutely cut it out of the action. if you can hand wave it, great. Be like, you bought what you wanted to buy. Nothing else happens. But if you have to do that shopkeep scene, make that shopkeep, like, awesome to talk to, and maybe he's got information that leads to the next quest. Make it do more than one thing. I hope that helps. Okay.
Yeah. So to expound a little bit more on that point, the who cares to me, I first conceptualized this in my own gaming when I was running a game, and they were in one town, and the interesting thing was in the next town, but I knew it was going to take an hour to get to the next interesting scene because we're taught you need to roll like a random encounter for every 6 hours of travel or whatever it is, and then every night go, okay, everyone roll your awareness check for your shift, and I knew there was nothing interesting in the woods, that I could just roll for a random monster, but that no one cared. It was more exciting for us to go, no, but we really want to talk to this king in the next city over. And so everyone got out the dice they needed for their awareness checks and their and they were just going on a road or like a trail, and I just went, no, you get there. Wait, we get there? Yeah, who cares? And everyone went, yeah. Who cares if we see a wandering whatever? If there was something large enough out there for us to care about, then we would have probably heard about it, or the story would be about the fact that there's a dragon wandering through the countryside. There isn't. So we just got there. And I saved an hour of time, and we got to move on to more interesting things. Now, some people love every last detail, and they want to just play characters walking down a road. If that's what your game is about, then I'm not going to poo-poo that and say, great, then that is your story. But so often that isn't the story. And so who cares, right? And that ties into, like, going to see the blacksmith, going to see... You're making numbers at me. 10 minutes? We got 10 minutes. We're doing fine. So that's the point of who cares. If it's important for that to happen, then absolutely do it. You know, if you've got some brilliant mayor they have to talk to, great. But if they don't, get to the next exciting thing. And that's worked really well for us in the show, is to just go... Sometimes Brian will ask, do you prepare? And we'll just go, no, we don't. There's nothing exciting for us to do. We want to get to this next scene. And we all just go, yeah, let's just go to the next scene. So we do it in the show. We do it at home. Hopefully that'll help a lot. So the next one is say yes and to your players. We've talked a lot about saying yes and, but it's essentially embrace the inventiveness of your players. Don't diminish it or make them think it's a bad idea to be inventive. That said, they shouldn't be intentionally attempting to derail or avoid what you're presenting, because they should be yes-anding as well. And so therefore, the onus is on you to do the same for them. That when they are embracing what you're giving to them, when they give you information back, yes-and it. Use it as an opportunity to go, I did want to bring in this guy. You meet that guy now. I'm going to yes-and you. Your crazy thing there, I'm going to bring this in, or this piece of information, or whatever. All the stuff you've probably got notes on. Look for more fun ways to bring them in now, and then the players feel like, wow, that's really neat. I had no idea I would stumble onto that, right? It makes it way more exciting for them. What?
Colin's just so cool. It's just...
It's great. Pretty much. We've done a lot of... Yeah, so just make it up. Unless you wanted to add to yes and.
No,
Okay.
we're good on yes and. Just make it up. If you're playing with players who are inventive, and you do a whole lot of preparation, you're probably wasting a whole lot of your own time, because a lot of the details and everything are going to be emergent by themselves. And you'll be more flexible the less you prepare. When we started the show, I used to write outlines that were about 2 pages long for an hour-and-a-half long show. And I used to prepare a whole lot as a game master. Now I write 3 sentences down. And everything else is just totally invented on the spot. So if you're preparing and you know the beats of where you want to be, and you're nervous, just remember this, like, I'm an inventive person. I've come up with this story so far. Like, it's all there. You improvise everything. It's just whether you do it at home or whether you do it in the moment. And doing it in the moment is going to play into this cooperative storytelling a lot better. So what helps me with this is if I'm caught unawares by a player and I have nothing prepared, which I don't anymore, and they want to know what happens, I just open my mouth and start talking. And it just comes. Like this whole panel. Really.
Yep. My mind is a blank.
So don't be afraid to do that.
Right. All the stuff we've been talking about empower you to just make it up. So, this is what you're leading up to with all of this stuff. So the way to put that into action is the next point, which is write scene prompts, not conclusions. Because you don't know what's going to happen, you cannot predict the dice, you cannot predict the players, you cannot predict any of these things. And if you can, then, you're a clairvoyant or something. But, so write a scene prompt, not a scene conclusion. Don't write, and the king dies. And I know that's going to happen. Instead, the scene prompt should be the king is in danger for these reasons of the story. I'm going to play to find out what happens. Is he injured? Does somebody else get killed? Does something unexpected become revealed? I don't know. That keeps it exciting for you as the game master, to not know what's going to happen, and instead to write prompts for players and then find out what happens and then build from there. And so then the next session, when you go, oh, what's going to happen this time? Look at what were the conclusions to those scene prompts, those important things. Write all that down and go, okay, so here's the fallout from that, and write another series of scene prompts. And so when you're writing scene prompts, you don't necessarily have to do them in like a linear order because you're yes-anding, you're making it up. You can just throw those in when they become appropriate because you're yes-anding. All right, I wanted this to happen. Now's the time to do it because they just did that. Here's my scene prompt. What do? You turn to the players and ask, what do you do? Let them tell you.
Take some time to come to a complete stop. Anyone ever been in a game and you've been playing, you're like on hour 2, hour 3, everyone's kind of out of their heads a little bit, getting a little bit goofy, things are coming off the rails. You have this luxury that we don't when we're on stage. You can stop for a while. Like, if things are getting to the point where, like, yeah, okay, we're goofing around, but we're not really playing the game anymore. We're making decisions in this story that maybe we would not make otherwise. Feel free to just be like, we're going away for 15 minutes and we're coming back. That gives you time to prepare. That gives the players time to get back into their heads and reestablish that suspension of disbelief. Don't feel like this is playtime for all of us. Like, don't be afraid to take the time you need to really do the thing that you decided you were going to do.
Yeah, have an intermission is what it is.
We won't have one, but have one.
Right, but it's saying if you're doing, if you're doing a 6-hour game session, have an intermission, take a break, and sometimes because you're making it up, you do need a few extra moments to think, right? You sort of go intermission and you go to the bathroom, and that gives you a moment to think without anyone bothering you. So that's what we mean by come to a complete stop. Walk away from the table, let everybody calm down. And the last point is, it's not your show, man.
Or girl.
Or girl. Sorry.
Show girl.
Man, woman. The point is that we're all. There's no one protagonist, right? You're presumably playing with more than one player at the table, and so they are the protagonists, and so the focus should be on how important they are in some way. You're not there to showboat the fact that you can invent any ultimate player character that you want as the game master because you don't have to roll. You can just write the stats to be whatever you want. If that's what you're there to do, you can just go home and write a novel, and we'll all read it later. But instead, this is about right, because you're probably a great writer, and that's great, and I encourage you all to write. But the point is that you should be keeping the spotlight on the players, not on, and then you see my cool guy, whatever, that I've written on this note card, do this cool thing, and everybody just goes, well, I guess I was glad I was there to see it. I guess that's cool. Make them the chosen ones. Don't make your NPC the chosen one.
We have like a couple minutes for questions. Go, guys.
Ask us whatever! Yay! Are there any questions? We've talked your ears off.
We've said everything there is to say.
There's a guy raising his hand. Yes.
So in my game, I actually come to a situation where I'm a player, and I sort of end up being the main character because I'm the most involved one. Do you have any suggestions that I can help talk to my game master, talk to my other players to get them more involved? Because I don't like feeling like I'm the main character and stealing the show.
Is it that their characters do not have competencies that are relevant, or is it that they as players are not stepping up?
They as players are not stepping up and making decisions.
I would either as you or as the game master, the first way I would hook them in is to say, gosh, my character isn't good at that, right? You're going to have to take point. And you may have to, at first, plan it out for them. Be like, hey, at a character level, go, hey, man, you're the one who knows how to X, Y, Z. Get in there and do this. I believe in you, right? Empower them. Be encouraging at a player and a character level, at both levels. That would be what I would do. I've done that in ones where it just sort of ended up that my character was the leader unexpectedly, but that, in the way that I don't want to steal the spotlight, I still realize at a player level, and all my friends are more than happy to step up. And so at the character level, I go, hey, you're the specialist in this. Kevin plays in this game. He can attest to this, where it's just sort of everyone waits for me, even though I might ask between players, I'll go, hey, Kevin, you think he's best at this? Yeah, he's the one who's best at this. Okay, Fairman, jump in there and do this. Right, you jump between the meta levels. Yes, his character's name is Theremin. So that would be my recommendation. Is like actively push the spotlight onto them, but in a way that's not, I don't want to deal with this. Instead, it's you can do it. I believe in you. Okay.
Are we getting kicked out of here?
Flee before we talk even more.
Man, I have
Yeah.
Baba Booey.